South Africa's Cape Coast, the African continent's southern tip, where two great bodies of water, the cool Atlantic and warm Indian Oceans, collide. The merging currents create an aquatic environment filled with life. For thousands of years, human communities have fed themselves from these rich waters. But now, here, like elsewhere, humans are overfishing the seas.
This was a breadbasket, food-wise. Our breadbasket is gone. You can't even live on the sea anymore down there. They've destroyed it.
Among the creatures being overfished is an unassuming mollusk, abalone.
Abalone's a giant sea snail. It has a shell and a big foot, and it crawls around and it eats kelp. It's quite a humble, squishy thing.
Found on rocky outcrops in the waters off the Cape Coast, this strange crustacean used to be one of the most plentiful shellfish in these oceans.
I imagine that it may be similar to what mussels are considered today, hyper-abundant, and people take them, but they're not particularly special.
But then, everything changes. In China, abalone is a major status food, where it is said to have exotic qualities.
The Chinese have always treated abalone as an aphrodisiac. It's a prized delicacy for the celebration of New Year and a lot of the other ceremonies.
South African abalone is rated the tastiest in the world.
Much like there's vintages of wine and cuts of meat, in South Africa, abalone is considered really nice.
In the 1990s, the Chinese demand for abalone becomes huge. Prices skyrocket, and in South Africa, as the sea snail becomes endangered, commercial harvesting is highly restricted. Few people would care about any of this were it not for what happens next. In small South African fishing communities, a major black market emerges.
The arrival of businessmen with huge amounts of money was insane. If you think of living next door to some resource and then suddenly it quintuples in value. When people came here offering, 400 Rand, 500 Rand a kilogram, people here went berfork, and that's like, people went crazy.
It becomes an abalone gold rush.
We call it here the white gold.
Local poachers quickly band together and are soon running massive illegal abalone poaching syndicates.
And that's kind of where the transition came in. You'd have a group of people whose purpose was to poach abalone, right? That was their criminal enterprise. So they're the syndicates.
Soon these syndicates are making fortunes illegally poaching and exporting the abalone to the Far East.
A boatload of divers was able to earn hundreds of thousands of Rand in a single night.
It's a multi-billion Rand industry. Abalone is worth, I think it's about 8 billion Rand in South Africa at the moment.
This is a criminal industry worth over $150 million a year. In the early 2000s, a difficult situation goes from bad to disastrous when more serious players move in. South Africa's most feared criminals are the notorious numbers gangs, so called because their members are tattooed with the number of their chapter. They learn about the easy money being made by the abalone poachers and decide to move in.
They see this very lucrative business opportunity in front of them. They're certainly not going to leave that alone.
Gangs set up in coastal towns and are soon running their own abalone poaching syndicates. And they bring with them another problem.
The Cape gangs, their primary economy in the Cape is drugs and moving drugs.
And they are mainly concerned with one drug in particular, tick.
Tick is one of the most psychotic drugs on the market at the moment. In fact, it has been linked to a lot of brutal slayings and killings and rapes because of its psychotic nature.
Similar to crystal meth, it is one of the most addictive and destructive drugs ever created. When the gangs start paying the local fishermen directly with tick, it spreads through the fishing communities like wildfire.
So instead of cumbersome cash exchanges, these barter exchanges were set up.
You would have school kids as young as 10 on a weekend going and hooking out a bag full of abalone. They get paid with methamphetamine.
What starts as an environmental crisis about abalone turns into a major criminal problem with terrifying consequences. Nowhere are these consequences more painfully felt than in Horston, a small fishing community on the Cape Coast. Once a quiet, unremarkable place, it is now a center for abalone poaching and has drawn in rival syndicates.
Because there is only so much abalone to go around, the poachers are incredibly territorial.
During 2001, there was a violent uprising.
This was murder. This was attacks using unlicensed military-grade weapons.
Gun battles were being run out. It was a horrific part in Cape Town's history.
Violence erupts up and down the coast.
It is what we call the Abalone Wars. Houses were burnt down. People were killed.
In a few short years, abalone poaching has brought lawlessness, violence, and drug addiction to the Western Cape.
Abalone is having a devastating effect. It's ripping apart the social fabric of our communities.
The authorities realize they have a very serious problem on their hands.
They needed to create something able to focus on this abalone trade, this abalone industry, this abalone poaching environment. So they created Operation Neptune.
Operation Neptune will be one of the most ambitious anti-poaching operations of all time.
We brought on board the real experts in maritime law enforcement, special forces, the Navy divers. We brought on board the Air Force, and of course the police air wing as well.
Neptune unleashes the combined power of all these different units in a wave of actions against the poachers. By the end of 2001, it is in full swing.
On the floor. You are under arrest.
This was probably the best time I ever had as a police officer.
One of the key elements in Operation Neptune is a specialist task team led by Justin Enslin.
Operation Neptune, when we started, I was one of the task team leaders.
Enslin is a marine inspector from the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. But his specialism is covert operations, and he plans to initiate the fight back with a major surveillance exercise.
The task team was working on observations, going into the mountain with big telescope lenses. We knew the areas they were going to dive.
Surveillance teams are deployed to remote locations overlooking prime poaching sites.
They had really effective long-range observation equipment and cameras, etc. It was far closer to the military methodology of operating.
Second open the boat.
For the teams, it involves months of observations, often working round the clock.
The poachers want to poach at night because that affords them the most covert operational time period. So if it's a good sea night, well, then you're working because the poachers are working.
We were 10 guys in the task team. We worked up to 18 hours a day. So we worked long hours.
These long hours pay off. Gradually, the team is able to learn the tactics the poachers use, how the dive teams are structured, who the leaders are, and when they operate. What they discover is that the poachers work in the deep sea in high-speed boats, known as ducks.
The ducks are rather large boats. Anything from a 4-meter duck up to a 9-meter duck is used. Some of them have very large engines on, up to 200 horsepower.
The ducks can access remote reefs out to sea where the last supplies of abalone are left. It becomes clear that these are highly sophisticated poaching operations.
They're all using night vision goggles and GPSs and things like that, because they're running without lights all the time.
What the task team learn is that each night the high-powered ducks cover huge distances, delivering multiple poaching teams to dozens of different dive sites.
The guys would go down with aqualungs and tire levers for a maximum of their air time, which is probably about an hour.
In 1 hour, a poacher can collect up to 200 abalone. It means the nightly hauls of each poaching team are measured by the ton. What makes them so hard to catch is that when the poachers dive, the ducks head off, leaving no sign above water of the mass poaching taking place beneath the waves. The boats don't go back to pick up the poachers or the abalone either. Instead, the divers swim to the shore and hide their haul in the shallow waters.
Once they collect their abalone that they've dived illegally, they also make the divers mark their bags in different ways.
Commonly, the poachers connect glow sticks to the bags so they can find them when they return to collect them at night.
They'll come back a day later, 2 days later to come and fetch it.
For Enslin and his team, this is a huge problem. The poachers have made it virtually impossible for the police to catch them at sea. So he decides they will target them on the land. Operation Neptune works out that there is one place where the syndicates are vulnerable. Abalone cannot be exported in its raw state. It must first be dried. Enslin learns the syndicates have set up drying factories in various remote, disused houses a few miles inland.
These houses were basically empty inside except for drying racks, which were metal racks where they would put their wet, raw flesh. You would have fans and gas heaters, so the fans would swivel over the heaters over a period of 4 or 5 days.
The drying racks mean these facilities are both big and immobile.
The weak spot is the drying facility itself.
At any one time, a drying house will contain several weeks' worth of poached abalone from dozens of dive teams. They are the one thing the syndicates can't hide, and where Enslin can strike. But he still needs to find exactly where the drying houses are. So he comes up with a plan. They are going to tail suspected poaching vehicles, which they believe are heading off to collect abalone. plan is to follow them to where they make the pickup and then trail them all the way to the drying facilities. But Enslin soon finds it's not that easy. The syndicates have sophisticated lookout systems.
Yeah, I think I can see some lights coming up.
They will have people scanning their road with vehicles up and down in that area where they are diving. They will put down watchboys on each corner in a certain area with cell phones.
If the watchboys see a vehicle is being followed, they radio the driver, who instead of picking up the abalone, turns decoy instead. They pull over to the side of the road and pretend to load up a stash of poached abalone.
They will stop the vehicle and they will open the boot of the vehicle. It looks like they're loading stuff, and then they will speed off.
The police, believing the vehicle will lead them to the drying house, then follow it. Meanwhile, the poachers activate a backup team, which heads to the real location of the abalone.
5 hours later, you have another team collecting the abalone and taking another route out. It is a cat and mouse game, which they would play the whole time with the police.
Enslin's plan fails. So he decides to turn to a different way of finding the drying facilities. Informants. The team starts to build up an extensive network of contacts within the poaching syndicates.
If you don't have informants, you don't have ears and eyes on the poachers.
After many months, the network starts to feed back vital intelligence.
Some of the informants were some of the divers. So the diver will go and offload the abalone and then they will contact us.
Thanks to a series of tip-offs, Enslin's team finally learn where the drying houses are. Now, he can make his move. In early 2003, Enslin's unit moves into position around several suspected drying facilities.
All the access points are covered, got guys in defense all around, so all the tactics are in place.
Open up! Police! Stay where you are! Place two, they're up! Hey, they're not going to do no! Get on the road. Right? Don't move! I'll shoot you! Don't move! All right, up against the wall. Okay, go! Hey, money brass. Okay.
In just 1 month, March 2003, Operation Neptune makes hundreds of arrests and brings in tons of illegally harvested abalone.
That month, we arrested 258 people for abalone offences. We seized 55,461 abalone to a total value of 5.9 million rands worth of abalone. So was Operation Neptune a success? Absolutely.
But with Enslin's success comes a whole new problem.
You don't go down to a warehouse and seize 18,000 dried abalone without it having an impact.
One syndicate head decides to strike back. The target? Justin Enslin himself.
They targeted Justin specifically. They targeted him because of the effect that he was having. They imported people who specialized in taking up on these contracts. What would typically be called hitmen.
The hitmen discover that Enslin regularly uses the same route to work. And that makes him vulnerable. On the day of the planned assassination, he heads off for work as normal. The killer takes position in the hills above. The aim is to take him out with a single shot from a sniper rifle. But before Enslin enters the kill zone,
information was received, intelligence was received that he was going to be shot at a certain point along the coastline.
They were gonna wait for me there and they're gonna shoot me there.
police are dispatched to the scene. But when they arrive, they find the site abandoned.
We actually found rifles, automatic rifles, at the point where we received the information that he was going to get shot from.
To this day, no one knows which syndicate ordered the attempted hit, but it is proof that Enslin's team is working. Emboldened by Neptune's achievements, Enslin targets one of the most successful poaching teams on the water.
The vessel with the name Super Beach.
So, Super Beach was a boat that belonged to one of the more well-known poachers.
That vessel gave us a lot of headaches.
Super Bitch is the fastest and most powerful boat on the water. So powerful, nothing else can touch it.
A big 8-meter Epidemic, a Gemini, with 200 horsepower motors on it.
Super Bitch can cover huge distances at speed, accessing Abalone colonies no one else can reach, and offloading their catches in the most remote locations.
It could outrun basically any rib currently based at the time in South Africa.
They're famous. A lot of groups try to catch them.
Even the air wing of the South African Navy have a go. They spring a nighttime ambush using a top-of-the-range Oryx helicopter. Super Bitch is in their sights. But to their amazement, the boat's skipper pulls away.
He was really good at what he was doing. As the helicopter chased him, he would turn either left or right, and the helicopter couldn't turn as fast as he could, and he managed to outmaneuver the helicopter. And as he outmaneuvered the helicopter, he would discard the bags of abalone.
It looked like Super Bitch would never be caught. But then in December 2003, one of Enslin's colleagues receives a tip-off.
The person was fishing, and he found some bags hidden in the rocks at that point.
Bernard Liederman, another marine inspector and member of Operation Neptune, discovers that the bags are full of abalone. He immediately puts in a call to Neptune HQ.
Just before Christmas, everybody was out on Christmas shopping. And then one of our colleagues phoned.
Hello?
Liederman tells Enslin that his informant has led him to a huge abalone haul, and that whoever has left it will be back to collect it soon.
What exactly?
Then he reveals something vitally important. Each of the bags has a set of pliers tied to them. The pliers are to help the poachers cut open the bags quickly. But crucially, only one poaching crew they know of uses this device. It is the unique signature of the Super Bitch crew. If they can stake out these bags, they will catch Super Bitch.
It was a very calm evening with a northerly wind blowing.
We waited in anticipation for them to arrive.
And about 11 o'clock at night, we saw the boat in the half moon, saw the boat coming in.
The silhouetted shape is instantly recognizable. Super Bitch is heading straight into Enslin's trap.
Saw the shadow coming in, and you could see the big motors in the dark, and you could hear them coming closer and closer. Yeah, it was quite heart-pounding.
As he approached, he dropped the first divers in.
Go, 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 go.
Divers were swimming towards us. They start picking the bags up.
Absolute pandemonium broke out.
There were shots fired from the vessel.
Then, to Enslin's dismay, the skipper starts up the boat engines. Super Bitch starts to pull out of the bay.
We was trying to get away then. You could immediately hear how the motor was hit.
He stumbled as a result of that.
But Super Bitch still has one engine working.
On that single motor, he managed to run way across the bay.
But all is not lost. With one engine shot out, they know the skipper will be forced to find a harbor nearby. They still have a chance of getting him.
We then radioed all the police stations and the officials along the coast to man all the slipways, so whenever that boat came in, it could be arrested.
They anxiously wait through the night. The message comes through. A large vessel has been found in a port along the coast with a bullet hole in one engine. The captain of the boat is seized, and Super Bitch is finally put out of operation. Throughout 2003, Operation Neptune continues to succeed. Tons of illegally harvested abalone are seized, and hundreds of arrests conducted. But later in the year, it hits a new problem. Neptune is running out of funds.
We cannot sustain an operation like Neptune with all those people and vehicles and aircrafts and vessels indefinitely in an area. It's impossible.
So despite its success, Operation Neptune is closed down. But the syndicates are still out there. And with Operation Neptune out of the way, they start growing in strength. and so to the syndicate chiefs.
People grew in stature in the community and got more powerful. These guys are very serious, very dangerous people. They start organizing and controlling the situations along the coast.
They become like mafia godfathers.
It's common knowledge amongst the communities in these small coastal towns of who the gang bosses are. They've been living and dealing and communicating with the communities for years. I have filmed a gang boss dishing out notes through the window as he drives around the streets. So it's that type of influence which the gangs have on communities.
And where the syndicate heads can't buy loyalty, they take matters into their own hands.
They know that whoever is going to talk will be eliminated, and they are very serious about it.
The police suspect a number of individuals of being syndicate heads, including one businessman from the Western Cape.
He started to control operations by setting up farms, getting the abalone to the farms, getting it dried and packed ready for export marketing.
If their suspicions are correct, the businessman could be wealthy enough to buy total protection.
He was untouchable because he can buy anybody, money could do everything for him.
The community stood up for him because he was basically the mayor of the town.
The police believe that in the years after Operation Neptune ended, he has built a multi-million-dollar abalone poaching operation. From 2004, abalone is being poached at a higher rate than ever before. Over 2,000 tons are illegally harvested each year. By 2007, the shellfish is classified as commercially extinct. But then, the tide turns again. In 2008, South Africa creates a new law enforcement agency, the Hawks.
The Hawks is essentially South Africa's answer to the FBI.
Its aim is to target the very worst crimes. And in the Western Cape, that means the illegal abalone trade. The Hawks are run by the police, and one of its leading officers is Lieutenant Colonel Lise Potgieter. She had been a cop on patrol when Operation Neptune was running. But 5 years on, she is now charged with taking down the syndicate heads. Potgieter draws together different law enforcement agencies to help her in her task. This reunites her with Operation Neptune veterans like Justin Enslin, Keith Thompson, and Bernard Liederman.
We've got the same aims and the same method of getting to those aims. It makes the group so much larger and more effective.
As a department, you'll find a dedicated group of officials, the people who really love what they're doing.
The key aim of bringing together these different agencies is to pool their intelligence. What they learn is that many of their different investigations are in fact linked.
We all were working various cases at different levels, and a lot of the cases were joined.
It's like a puzzle you have with 50 pieces. The units amalgamated, suddenly you were only looking for 2 pieces left instead of 50 or 20.
They started with the framework, and from there they worked into all of the layers of the puzzles until the whole picture was clear to them.
Once we had grouped all the information from different groups and we had it in one place, it was much easier for us to get a strategy forward.
And as they put all the evidence together, one name crops up over and over again, that of the Western Cape businessman.
It doesn't matter which investigation you were part of, this name would pitch up.
The businessman will become the newly formed Hawks unit's first priority target.
It was a deliberate decision to target the most influential person in that community that we thought were involved in the poaching.
The problem the team face is that the suspected criminal boss seems skilled at keeping his hands clean. There never seems to be anything to directly link him to any poaching operations. They start by following anyone they suspect is part of his syndicate, no matter how lowly.
If they were in the water, we would be nearby, we would do surveillance.
The aim is to get enough evidence on these foot soldiers to convince them to turn informant and testify against their alleged boss.
If you want to be successful in any investigation on this level, organized crime, you cannot do it without informers. You need to establish in the group is the weakest link and try and see if you can convince that link to work with you instead of against you.
Members of the syndicate suddenly find they are being pulled over for speeding, running a red light, having a defective wing mirror. They are threatened that previous convictions will be revisited, old charges reinstated. That is, unless they reveal everything they know about the Western Cape businessman.
And then I start talking to the suspect. You're gonna go to jail for this. Work with me.
What we basically did is we gave them the opportunity that you can become a state witness.
By 2010, Potgieter and the team have built an extensive network of informers, which leads to a tip-off. The syndicate are moving a shipment of abalone in a 2-car convoy, one to carry the abalone, the other providing cover. In the support car will be none other than the businessman himself. Armed with this intelligence, Potgieter starts to plan how to intercept the convoy.
We knew which vehicle he was driving and we knew the vehicle that was driving the abalone.
To justify their suspicions about the businessman, they must catch the vehicle carrying the abalone and obtain evidence linking it to the businessman, who is in a separate vehicle. Potgieter instructs the units not to strike until the businessman and the abalone are together at their end destination. On the date provided by the informant, police units move into position.
We were placed already in places along the road because we knew the road that he was going to take.
Just as expected, they see the 2 vehicles they've been waiting for. A truck with the abalone in front and a van carrying the businessman following behind.
I was driving behind him and the shipment vehicle was in front.
Suddenly, something goes wrong. The truck speeds off.
The drivers with the abalone started driving away recklessly.
If the truck gets away, they will have nothing to link the businessman to the abalone. Potgieter acts quickly. She orders a police unit to break cover and pursue the truck.
It was clear that he wasn't going to stop, and we needed to get the abalone before we could arrest him.
The truck doesn't get far.
The vehicle with the abalone had an accident and couldn't drive further.
Out of the vehicle. They're under arrest. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Hands where I can see them.
The arresting officer radios Potgieter. The vehicle is full of illegally harvested abalone. But they have nothing in the truck to link to their main target, the businessman. Now Potgieter takes a chance. She might not have enough for an arrest, but still she swoops on the suspected syndicate chief.
You got to be kidding me.
Turn around.
Come on.
But the businessman doesn't seem concerned. But he is not smiling for long. In the businessman's vehicle, they find registration papers for the truck carrying the abalone, and they are in his name.
I found a proof of sale for the bucket that the abalone was found in. Proof that the syndicate leader bought the vehicle the previous day.
The documents appear to provide a direct link between the businessman and the abalone shipment.
It was a good day feeling, and I don't know which one of us, me or him, were actually the most surprised that day.
The businessman is arrested. Following these arrests, the trade in abalone by South African syndicates starts to drop.
It have sent a strong message out. They were the untouchables. And there all of a sudden, all of the pillars have broken down. The foundation was taken underneath them.
More and more informants come forward, and the Hawks build a case that they believe is ever stronger. Eventually, they charge the businessman and other suspected members of his syndicate with a much more serious crime than abalone poaching, that of running a criminal enterprise.
They successfully charged him for racketeering and brought him to court.
All the defendants have pleaded not guilty and are awaiting trial.
Lifetime imprisonment is one of the things that they will face if they've been found guilty.
But already the effects of the Hawks' operations are being felt on the streets.
That have an immediate effect on the poaching incidences that occurred along the coastline. It came to a standstill because everybody thought, am I next? Who's going to be next?
It is all the result of tireless police work and the commitment of the authorities to deal with the evils of abalone poaching.
This is the success story and the fruits of collaborating and working together with an absolutely dedicated group of officials.
But whether this reprieve will save South African abalone from extinction is yet to be seen.